We're going to call the meeting to order of the North St. Paul Planning Commission on December 5th, 2024. We have an agenda in front of us. If there are no questions about the agenda, I would, well, actually, we probably, with regard to the agenda, we probably need to do a roll call first, don't we?
Commissioner Wise.
Here.
Commissioner Alvarez.
Here.
Commissioner Kane Burback.
Here.
Commissioner Gadboy.
Here.
Commissioner Muick.
Present.
Commissioner Rothy.
Here.
And Chair Blees.
Here.
And then also present this evening, myself, Community Development Director Riley Grahams, and City Council Member Liaison Jason Norby.
Excellent, thank you. I would request a motion for adopting the agenda unless there are questions.
I'll move.
Motion from Commissioner Weiss, second.
I'll second.
Second from Commissioner Rothy. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And we are good. Approval of meeting minutes from November 7th. Commission meeting. I did not see anything there that got my attention. Questions, comments, or a motion to approve the meeting minutes from November 7th?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion to approve from Commissioner Rothy, second.
I'll second.
Second from, excuse me, Commissioner Muick. I know your name. I actually do.
I was trying to save you having to try to talk during a cough.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We are good with the meeting minutes. The meeting is open to the public. There is no public present. With that, hey, we can go fast. We are to item 5. Public hearings with regard to adult use cannabis ordinance public hearing. Staff presentation.
All right, thank you very much. So as we all know, the state legislature recently approved legal adult use cannabis consumption here in the state of Minnesota, and the Office of Cannabis Management, or OCM, is expected to begin issuing licenses early in 2025. Even though the licensing and registration of these products is going to be handled largely by the state of Minnesota, cities do have a limited role in dictating available locations within each municipality for sales, production, operation, usually particularly in the areas of land use. And so that's what we're here this evening to consider. Attached in your packet is a memorandum from the city attorney, sort of an overview, overarching look at all of our potential local control options authorized by the Cannabis Act. So that is in your packet this evening. And then the City Council recently met in a work session format on November 19th to discuss the available options to the city and provide some clear direction to city staff, which is now being forwarded to the Planning Commission to conduct the public hearing on the ordinance information. And I'll note too that a lot of the staff recommendations were developed along with myself, a couple other community development staff members, City Manager Frandell, Police Chief Rosales. So kind of a collective look at our available options, and then we made those recommendations to the City Council at the November 19th meeting. So first, kind of a blanket statement, we cannot outright prohibit the sale and possession and transportation of cannabis and hemp products per state statute. We are only allowed to enact reasonable, and I use air quotes there, reasonable restrictions, meaning you cannot, through local zoning control, outright ban or prohibit the operation of cannabis sales and other types through those local zoning controls. So the packet is kind of broken up into just certain sections, and what I'm going to do is just kind of do a quick overview of each section, talk a little bit about the staff recommendation, and then what the council's recommendation was, and we can stop at each one. I can go through the whole thing, however you guys want to handle it. So first and foremost, zoning. The staff recommendation is to allow for cannabis operations in the MU2 and the MU3 zone. Cannabis operations would not be allowed in the MU1 zone, which is the downtown mixed use. The idea there is that we have an historic downtown, and that the staff and city council is recommending that we do not allow in those areas. So I asked Chris to include an official zoning map so you can kind of get a little bit better look. So really, we're looking at sort of the dark pink and, I don't know if you want to call that mauve, I guess is a color, to give you an idea. Where that hatched area in the lighter pink, that is the downtown district overlay, and which is the MU1 zone. So that includes 7th Avenue from, is it First all the way to Century, and then up Margaret, kind of right by City Hall here. So council's direction was to include those recommendations to the planning commission, so only allow operations in the MU2 and MU3 zones. The idea, or the question of a conditional use permit was brought up also during our work session meeting. Our recommendation was to allow it. I know the city council had some discussion back and forth about whether or not a conditional use permit would be applicable in this situation. The city is really, really tightly restricted on what restrictions you can place on a business, and the city attorney's comment was, you know, the city is not really allowed to be more restrictive in a lot of these cases, and therefore maybe a conditional use permit is not even, shouldn't even be required. I think the council members agree that, you know, it might be worthy of the planning commission to consider that. So that is, I think, a consideration for the planning commission this evening, is whether or not, you know, it would go through a public hearing process. You know, I guess one good thing about it would be if a location is selected, you get the public notices from 350 feet around. So at least the localized area would be notified of an incoming business. That's one benefit. Really, outside of that, there's not a whole lot that we can further restrict, okay? The city council did ask the city attorney to include a separate memo that's also in your packet to the planning commission that further outlines a little bit more of what, you know, you can and cannot do when it comes to a conditional use permit. So you want me to stop there and we can have a little discussion on that particular item, or I can keep going? Then we can.
Seems
pretty clear.
Okay,
We
Okay.
can have more discussion after the public.
that sounds good. Okay,
The public hearing is going to be pretty.
it's going to be quick. On the second item is the minimum distance from schools and parks. The Cannabis Act allows for cities to prohibit cannabis operations 1,000 feet or less from schools and 500 feet or less from daycares, residential treatment facilities, or attractions within a public park that regularly used by minors. That's very vague in the state law. It's not the outline of a piece of property that a park is on. It is from a park attraction. Kind of don't really know what that is. That's not really defined. So the recommendation from the city attorney is to essentially measure from anything that's used regularly by minors. That would be a playground equipment, a water feature if we have any, a ball field, those types of uses. So it's, you know, staff's gonna have to do a little bit more digging when it comes to that buffer zone when looking at locations, but shouldn't be too much of an issue. The recommended.
Not the park itself.
Not the park itself, from a park attraction.
That's pretty big.
Why they didn't make it just a park, or explain it a little bit better?
And the city can't define it as the park?
Nope, because that's not what the state law says. We're left having the same questions about why as well, so, yeah. One other question that I brought up was the Gateway Trail. It is, you could consider it used by minors from time to time. However, that's not a city-owned park or attraction, so it's owned by the Minnesota DNR, so we don't have any jurisdiction there. So the staff recommendation was to impose a 750-foot minimum distance from schools, and then the 500-foot minimum from daycares, treatment facilities, park attractions. And that is what the council agreed as well. In terms of hours of operation, again, we're very limited in what we can and cannot restrict. State law allows for cannabis operations to operate between 10 a.m. and 9 p.m. And Monday through Sunday. and that they cannot operate between 2 a.m. and 8 a.m. or 10 a.m. on Sundays and 8 a.m. on Sundays, 10 a.m. on Sundays, excuse me. So we may pass more restricted ordinances, but not during the hours that are specifically listed. So our recommendation was to allow operations Monday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 10 p.m., and on Sunday, 10 a.m. to 9 p.m. That's what we tried to do is closely resemble what liquor store operations were in the city. We try not to treat those a little differently, but still be within the allowed restrictions, so. In terms of number of registrations, the state law allows that if cities want to cap, that is, you don't have to, but if you want to cap it, it would be 1 per 12,500 residents. How they came up with that number, could not tell you, but that is the number. Per the recent state demographer data, North St. Paul has 13,015 people, so we are just slightly over by about 515 people. So therefore, if you do want to cap it, it would have to be capped at 2. And so that is the staff recommendation and also the council recommendation. The only other considerations that are available to the city were just some, more defined definitions when it comes to enclosed lock public view relating to residential districts and homegrown operations. So if people want, you can have up to 6 plants, I believe, in your homegrown operations. However, they just need to be, we included better definitions, what enclosed means, what locked means, and what public view means when it comes to those specific locations. And then the other recommendation that the council also agreed on was prohibiting outdoor seating and smoking areas at these businesses. So think of, a bar having a back patio where people can go out and have a drink. Would not be allowed. You cannot purchase a cannabis product at a location. If they have a back patio, if they did, they could not go out there and use it.
Would they be able to smoke on premise like a cigar store can have a cigar room?
That's a good question. As of right now, I do not believe they can. I know that is a consideration that a lot of businesses are looking for, sort of like a cigar room type atmosphere. But as of right now, I do not believe so.
Is that in the state statute?
When it comes to, they're called like sampling rooms is
Yeah.
I think what they're defined as, and they are not allowed.
Okay.
Yeah. Also in your packet this evening are, I'm always interested in what our neighbors are doing. And so I did reach out to Maplewood and Oakdale and asked for, kind of what they're going through. These have not been fully approved yet, to my knowledge at least, so, don't take this for fact, but this is what I connected with their staff members, and this is what they told me that they were looking at during their council was considering, so. So that's that.
Excellent. Well, we could probably open the public hearing and then have further discussion because it doesn't appear the public is here. So, so we will open the public hearing for officialness at 6:44 p.m. And since there is no one from the public here, we will close the public hearing at 6:44 and 10 seconds. And then further discussion.
I have to admit, I'm very curious about what areas in the city actually would fall in the areas that could be, and I had requested a map of that, but I'm not sure Chris ever quite understood what I was trying to get at, because I'm just looking at the exclusion zones versus the areas that it's available, that we could sell it in, and I'm just wondering how much space is left. Are we narrowing it down to the point that there's like 3 or 4 places in the city that it could be sold at? And not saying I oppose that, I just am curious.
I did my own personal overlay. It looks to me like an area northeast and southwest off of 7th, north of 7th. And then there's a little spot of MU2 south on 120 and north on 120, just north of Highway 36. That's the only areas that I could see that looked feasible without restriction.
Like I said, I was just curious about that. I just-
So I'm curious, what is our ordinance for liquor stores? Do we cap the number of liquor stores? Do we restrict them? How many feet from schools and daycares?
Those are great questions. I apologize, I don't know those answers.
Because I'm wondering why we don't just adopt those same rules. I mean, they're both controlled substances. They're both intoxicating. They're both legal.
I'm guessing the state statutes are considerably different, however.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm
I'm
guessing.
just curious and what is the reasoning, except that because everything's so close to schools and daycares, you wouldn't even be able to do it in the historical district. But a storefront where they can't use, I don't see a problem with that. Especially for a town that's trying to get businesses in that district. But our restrictions won't allow it, so.
I'll speak to your first question a little bit. My understanding is the state regulation for liquor store, which is not allowed to be controlled by the city, is 1,500.
Okay,
And then the city manager, after talking with the attorney, recommended the 750 rather than the 1,000, because he was worried that if we went with the 1,000, we would be regulating out of businesses and not in compliant with that first line the lawyer said of,
we're effectively zoning as.
De facto
Yeah.
prohibition, yeah.
yeah, so that's my understanding of the first question.
Yeah.
So one of the things that jumps out, so I've got a place in Upper Michigan. I've got family that's up there. Michigan does have permits, obviously, for it. There's about 5 different places on the Michigan-Wisconsin border. Every single one of those, there's probably a parking lot, and there's about 50 cars in each one of those lots. Because there's no place to smoke it inside, people will order it, they'll come in, they'll pick it up, whatever they're gonna do with it. Those parking lots are notoriously, and I can tell you on numerous occasions, there's 100 cars waiting in those lots on a routine, ongoing basis. If I look at any of our locations here, we are not gonna be able to handle that kind of traffic if that's the kind of activity that we're talking about generating. So I guess I would ask, what does that mean as we start thinking about 2 locations in a town that cannot handle that kind of volume?
I'm wondering, could we make a requirement that they could not be located on, that both cannot be located on the same road? No. That might help a little bit.
No, there was an ability to restrict it 2 locations within 500 feet of each other. And we did talk about that at the council level. The council thought, again, that might be, that you're, again, then further restricting
Yeah.
available locations, and that they did not want to move forward with that recommendation.
Okay.
But there's nothing that would allow us to say, it really comes down to zoning and then the buffers around these specific locations.
So the second thing that jumps out is, so this is around distribution. What about growing of it, and how does that relate to the distribution of it? Can a facility grow it and distribute it, and what does that look like from the city? And how many different units are we talking about on the growing side of it? Because that could definitely impact any of these pieces as well.
My understanding, and I'll defer to Chris, but there's the commercial operations could either be growing or selling. But we can only restrict the commercial. The private use of what you can grow privately, we have no control over, to be more restricted than what the state said. So the city council was recommending you grant 2 licenses. And those could either be commercial growing, commercial, or combination of their 4. But it was the 2 licenses that were recommended
Yeah.
by the
There
council.
were
But it
6.
doesn't define whatever they apply for them. It could be any of the 6.
Yep. And those were the only 6 that the city could have any control over. The other ones are all directed by the state, and we have no control over.
Is there any control over the amount that they can purchase?
You mean someone just walking up and buying?
Right. I don't think there is on liquor stores, but I'm just wondering, with marijuana, You know, is it defined as an amount for personal use, or, you know, could we wind up with a marijuana distribution center here in town because so many people, I'm not saying we would, I'm just thinking,
I mean, I think it would be honest to define, or, you know, what is a distribution center? If it's a retail location and you come in and say, can I buy 1 pound of marijuana? One, I highly doubt that they would sell that quantity. Because now you're going into trafficking and, not trafficking, that's wrong, distribution, you're talking larger amounts. That's, I don't think, but I have read through the Cannabis Act probably 15 times, and nothing is occurring to me at the moment
Yeah.
about individual purchasing amounts.
My understanding was that was going to be determined and set by the State Office of Cannabis Management, not by the individual cities.
They are still going through the rules and regulations process.
yeah, so we probably are going to have to readdress this again at some point in the future, just when we see what the results
Yeah.
are of this.
And to be honest, we probably have no control over that.
Yeah,
We won't. That is gonna be in state statute, that's gonna be higher ups than us.
yeah.
Again, I mean, we are very limited and very restricted on what
Oh,
we
yeah.
can and cannot do.
Yeah, no, I understand, there's not too much control we have over this, I'm just kind of thinking, you know, what might we have to do in the future?
Yeah, and if we get to a point where we need to come back and update our ordinance based on real life, what's happening, that's certainly, cities will be able to do that.
Yeah, because, you know, I guess the thing that, and I had not thought about, because I've not been around an area where distribution is allowed, but from what you were saying about the amount of cars getting into the parking lot, if we have a situation like that, that's really going to bog down 120. And, you know, the state's already having enough problems trying to find enough property to deal with everything they want to do to 120, let alone having to, you know, turn lanes for a quarter mile because of traffic
But you need to
backup.
keep in mind that North St. Paul isn't going to be the only city with
Yeah.
a cannabis store.
And if those are on the border
is
of Michigan
statewide.
and Wisconsin, there's probably a lot of
Yeah.
people from Wisconsin
It's-
coming into Michigan and smoking it there if
Yeah.
they can't do it in
All-
the state.
Every city's gonna have.
Yeah.
Yes,
No,
absolutely.
I understand that. It's just
Yeah.
that, you know,
We're not gonna be one in the Twin Cities.
No,
And I
no.
can see that level of traffic, but this won't occur
But
here.
respectfully, you got 694, that's a
Oh,
stone's
yeah.
throw away. You got 36 headed on its way out of town.
Yep.
I mean, respectfully, you will have some of that activity.
Sure.
Because we're close enough to the border. It's 30 minutes to the Wisconsin border or less, depending on how you're driving.
Yeah.
I'm not still
So in response to what you were saying, the restrictions on parking, for instance, would be the normal retail parking requirements in that zoning.
Yep.
So there's nothing
is already set in code.
extraordinary,
Yeah.
nothing extraordinary put forth for this. And we really, I mean, I'm not sure how you would do that, or if we should, try to put some additional rules in place for that. But I'm not even sure how you would.
The one thing
one
that
of-
occurs to me on that is, you know, and it may be in the rules already, or it may be coming, but a drive-through purchase. You know, somebody puts in the equivalent of, you know, a drive-through liquor store or a McDonald's that allows for the distribution of their cannabis through
Is that
a
something the
drive-through
state is
window
gonna
or something.
allow?
I
Yeah.
don't know how it will be here. Half my time is, not half my time, a lot of my time is in Alaska, where it's been legal for a long time, and they're all drive-up. There's a walk-in, but all of them have a drive-up window, and they're pretty full. And everybody can have it there, and they're still pretty full. And so they do drive-ups there. It's the next natural step.
Yeah, and I know the OCM they will be addressing how these businesses could operate
Yeah.
in the terms of the scenarios you are all bringing up.
Right.
Okay.
We do have drive-through restrictions, but I don't know what they are off the top of my head.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd have
They're
to dig through
usually
the code.
just a space issue, though.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
So if
It
they have the
usually
space, they're
is,
gonna
yeah.
get it.
Yeah.
Yep.
They have a big enough lot.
Right.
and They build
The
it.
only lot I see that would work is South and Century.
One of the things, though, for the drive-through, it does provide a measure of safety for the workers and the shop itself. So there is the other side of that where, you know, if our local residents are gonna be working at the store, it's much safer to be, you know, have the customers going through a drive-through where there is no personal interaction. So there is a safety plus to it only being drive-through. Does that make sense?
I hear you, but if that's the concern, that raises a whole nother level of questions for me then. If we're that concerned that this is a dangerous thing, which it's already through, so that's a separate issue, but,
Yeah.
but yeah. Yeah.
I think I would agree with Commissioner Gadboy about a lot of what she said with, you know, this is no different from a liquor store. I mean, I understand the state statute is going to control it slightly differently, but from our point of view, it shouldn't really be any different. You know, we allow liquor stores and breweries, tap rooms, micro distilleries, all that stuff in MU1, MU2, and MU3, all without CUP. So to me, the CUP, I would say no to that. My opinion. I would even say, why are we not allowing it in MU1? I mean, I know hypothetically we may not even be able to get one there because of the distances from schools and that sort of thing. But to me, it seems like we should just allow it, you know, to follow the same logic that we're doing with liquor sales.
Yeah.
So that would be my opinion about those two things.
So Riley, is there any type of a map that actually does dictate where, I mean, I know Bill's working on a map. Is there any type of a map that does show what we are talking about as far as what locations and what is viable?
Yeah, we were unable to create essentially a map that overlaid all of the zoning and then the 750 and the 500-foot distances. We were just not able to do that. We don't have that capability. What we could do is do an analysis of if these were all implemented, what actual and we could just list out the actual properties and their locations about, we would do that anyways, because if a business came in and said, hey, I want to open up a cannabis retailer here, we would say, that's not one of the available properties, you can't do it there. So we would do that anyways. We haven't done that yet, but that's something that we could easily do.
That's going to have to be done, the overlay of the maps, right? I mean,
Oh, yeah.
that just has to be figured out, because that's
Oh, yeah.
going to
Yep.
limit where people can be.
Yes, yeah, because they're gonna, and we'll get, you know, as soon as licenses from the OMC are given out, we'll get inquiries. You know, we'll say, hey, we want to, you know, we think the North St. Paul, Maplewood area is a good spot. What available properties zoning-wise can we operate then? And we'd share that list. And then they could go, okay, I'm gonna go to the property owner and buy it or lease or something, you know, that's up for them to decide, but. So we would be generating a list of available properties anyways.
Comparing the two maps, I mean, it looks like it's maybe 20 properties or something like that, that would fall into that, you know, and again, these are not like vacant, there's stuff there currently, but I would say it's about in that range, it looks like to me.
Yeah, the only one that really seems like that would lend itself right now would be that, where the pizza factory is, because they're the only place left in that whole building.
Yep.
So I could,
That would be a prime location, to be
yeah.
honest.
Good, right by my house.
But I really don't see a reason not to do it in MU1 as well. And I'm not a big fan of marijuana, just, you know, I hate the smell of the darn stuff myself, but, you know, I think that we've got some areas in MU1 that are currently open, and, you know, if that's something that could help develop and give the city a bit more of a tax base, and,
And it will drive traffic to the city.
yeah, you know, so, I'm not saying I'm wholeheartedly I'm not over the moon about the idea, but I don't really see a
Yeah.
big problem with having it.
Same.
So would it be fair for me to say then you're thinking, Commissioner Miyok, you're thinking of allowing it in MU1, 2, and 3,
Yeah,
but it would be, you know,
it's still,
The MU1 zone would be further restricted based on the buffer
Yes.
zones that would be implemented.
But
Right,
if for some
yeah.
reason those buffer zones, if a school or a daycare closed and that shifted, that option is.
Then
might be
opens up,
there.
yes.
Yes,
And likewise, if another one moves in somewhere, it further restricts.
yes.
Right.
It's sort of the who's there first type.
Yep.
The MU1 area that would be considered acceptable based on our other restrictions we're talking about is very, very small.
Yeah.
There's a
Yeah.
couple of small properties.
It's at the far
in
end of.
downtown.
It's at the far end of 7th near Century, I believe, right?
Yeah, there's a little tiny bit
On the
there.
north side, it looks
Yep.
like.
Very small.
And then you've got a couple spurts sort of,
There's a couple of little spots in the, let's see. Maybe one lot or two.
yeah, because right now there's
in there.
there's
It's
two
really
charter
small.
schools that are essentially downtown. And
Yeah.
that eats
I
up a
forgot
lot of
about that
space.
one that's down
Yeah, there's-
there.
Those are,
Lit-
it's
where am I
very,
pointing?
very
Yeah,
small.
It's literally
Yeah.
across the street, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not sure it matters either way, frankly.
It probably doesn't.
Because it's too, and in fact, if you do an overlay of these maps, just really roughly, there are not very many properties.
No.
Yeah, because that's what my point was originally, was trying to eyeball it. I just wasn't seeing an awful lot that was left.
And
No.
is our having the 750 feet essentially zoning it out?
It's not.
Are we
That was a
letting
so that was a
Just
question,
enough,
that was a question posed to
space.
the city attorney, and he felt that
okay.
based on what the city council had recommended and staff's recommendation, that you would be fine in that enacting those restrictions because you would not be bringing the total number of properties down to 0.
Okay, so if a shop opens up and a daycare a couple of years later goes in, the shop doesn't have to move, correct?
Correct.
Okay,
Their grandfather.
They would, and their license would be renewed year after
Okay.
by, and again, those licenses are renewed by the state, not by,
Yep.
yeah.
okay, just wanted to,
And
The
the,
city of North St. Paul own a facility? And what does
Yes.
that look like? Does that impede on on the other two?
It does
It
not.
doesn't.
So if the city were,
size
and
tend to
we
be
had a conversation about that at
Yeah,
the
that's actually
council
in the
meeting as
packet.
well, that if a municipal operation were to be considered, it would not count towards one of the 2 registrations.
but they would still have to stay within the same zoning.
Yes,
So, okay,
yeah, we can't disregard our own zoning for our own,
I'm just making sure.
yeah,
So can we
that would be challenged.
establish a city cannabis and liquor store then?
We're looking into it.
I have
Yeah,
thoughts
that
about
was, that was the recommendation of the council.
with the daycares too, I think, I mean, just looking at the one that's circled near my house that I know the woman that lives there, it's not a real daycare. It's, she has one child that comes over to her house. But I'm assume she's licensed. That's why it's on here,
That's how
so.
it's, that's how
But
it's,
those things can change so
they do.
Fluid.
readily, so it's really hard to, that's why I would say again that the ME1 may be good to put in there, just because, schools may not move, but some of the other things that they're calling out here may not be there, in 5 years or
Schools
something.
may, charter schools may
Charter
move too,
schools
yeah.
Change and move.
So here's a question I'd have based on my experience in Alaska. So to perfectly equate these to liquor stores, we don't have like a historic pattern for that.
Yep.
Yet, I don't think. So I get it that they're both legal now, but it still seems like a difference,
Oh, and from my perspective, I don't even go to liquor stores.
all right?
These are both controlled substances, and they're both legal.
Yep.
So from my
Yep.
perspective,
You
I
should
don't
treat
want any of them. But we have to.
Yeah.
Yep. And so you had asked about the room where you can try stuff.
Sample room.
Sample room.
So in, say, Anchorage, which is a lot bigger city than Kenai, where our home was, like, you can hardly go anywhere and not smell cannabis. It's crazy, a 700,000 person city, and there's almost nowhere you can go and not smell it. And they're everywhere there. There's none of these. So to talk about the downtown area and say, well, this is our like walkable city part, if they're not, people aren't allowed to like openly smoke it, So like, you know, alcohol, I don't really drink much either.
Yeah.
So can we drink open in downtown, like during the car show?
No.
Okay, because I see people drink once in a while out there, right? And I don't know.
If there's enclosed patios, I think they can.
Nope, just on the sidewalk. I'm just
just
walking
just
down by
walking the
Tot Boss,
sidewalk,
and
no.
there's someone, you know. So my question is, if they can buy stuff, fine, but to have downtown smell like that would be a different thing to me. So that'd be my only question on this. I get it, they're legal, we're gonna, it's coming here. I wouldn't want downtown to smell like that.
Yeah.
Because it's different for alcohol, that doesn't smell, right? And
yeah.
the same, right? You're not,
What
I
are
don't
the-
walk into
what
a
are
house
the-
when someone's drinking and come out
What are the
and my, I
state
smell.
regulations on smoking in public?
So it's the same as smoking cigarettes.
Okay,
Interesting.
so they can walk downtown.
No,
down on
no,
the
I'm
street,
sorry. I thought you meant like indoor?
Yeah,
you're
no,
s-
I
you're
mean
talking
outdoor.
outdoor.
Like outdoor.
Outdoor.
No, that would not be allowed.
Thank you. That's what I was wondering.
So, okay, so it's different than cigarettes?
Correct, sorry.
Oh.
I thought you meant the
Oh,
the
no,
Indoor
the
Clean Air
indoor,
Act.
yeah.
No, and that's,
mind went.
but so if people can't just walk down the street, then that's different to me, I guess.
Yeah.
Have you been to the State Fair lately?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah,
not
you're
that
not,
they
you're not technically allowed, yeah.
they're not technically
Yeah,
allowed.
I think that's
It's not enforced.
thou shall not and,
Right.
you know.
It's a
still
matter
will.
of enforcement,
Yeah.
and you can only enforce it to, you know, a minimum degree, I'm sure.
It'd be,
Additional signage for downtown.
okay.
Yeah, you know, I've talked to a lot of planning professionals talking about what's the impact going to be.
Yeah,
Think of right now, because now that it is, possession is legal, right now is pretty much going to be the same as what you're going to experience. If you know, somebody can go into a retail store, purchase some marijuana, it's not like they can go outside, put in a pipe and start smoking immediately. I mean, you could. That's where the enforcement side comes in, right? But that's not legal.
okay.
So what we've talked a lot about in our industry is what the conditions are right now is likely going to be the same once licenses are open.
Okay.
I'm trying to find it. Those regulations were put forth before the city council in October about use. And I'll try and find the minutes before we go. But we basically recommended what Chief Rosales recommended to us. But the use regulations have already been before the city council. And I'll try and find that.
So the one caveat, though, is enforcement is different than what the rules say.
Yep.
I mean, that is a legitimate thing, because it is not being enforced across the board.
Yeah.
I guess the question is, where are we standing at this?
So just hearing, I'm going to take a shot in the dark here, just based on what I've been hearing. So I've heard a lot of discussion about not requiring a conditional use permit. And I've heard a lot of discussion about, when it comes to zones, allowing it in the MU 1, 2, and 3. 2 and 3 and 1, which would be the difference from the recommendation.
I wouldn't be hopeful that they would enforce well in M1, so I wouldn't be for that.
Okay.
I would also
Yeah.
not be for that.
Same.
But if it was enforced, then I wouldn't see a problem with it. But it's true, I
Okay,
smell it in a lot of public menus.
Sure.
yeah. Yeah, given that thought, I guess I would also say I'm against
Yeah.
one.
Okay. So back to allowing it just in MU 2 and 3?
Yeah.
And then no conditional use permit?
That would be my leaning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Agreed.
So, and then I didn't hear any other discussion on any other points. Those all seem pretty,
No, the rest of it
It does seem
seems-
like there's going to be some pretty small areas where this
Yeah.
can happen, and we need to allow it.
Yeah.
And so we
Yeah.
have to make sure it's allowable.
I was playing, and there really isn't very much.
there's not a lot.
There's
Yeah,
not a
there
lot
really
there
aren't,
yet.
yeah.
Yeah.
And if you put a restriction on how close they can be, then it's 3 zones, not very large zones. So, so that being the case, if there's no more discussion, we can entertain a motion to make a recommendation to council.
And I believe the only change in the recommendation would be to not allow or not require a conditional use permit. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
Everything else seems to be
I think so.
along with the
I
recommendations.
think so.
Okay.
I'll make the motion for that.
Motion from Commissioner Wise. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
A second from Commissioner Alvarez. Is there any further discussion?
Nope.
Then all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And opposed? Nay. None. There are none.
Every once in a while, I feel like someone should say nay about something.
I have heard a nay here from time to time.
Been a while since we've.
Yeah,
Been a while since we had a good nay, huh?
rare.
Jason, is there anything else that jumps out from city council that you think of as, around this topic that we should be thinking about that we have not already?
Our hands are so tied on this subject. At a city level, I can't think of any meaningful discussion we can have because A, the Office of Cannabis Management hasn't truly vetted all the details yet. So I think there's gonna be some meaningful meetings 3 to 6 months to 12 months in. But right now, we could talk till we're blue in the face about a lot of this, and A, either we can't do it, or B, the state won't give us the authority to do it.
I agree with that.
Can we make a recommendation that we readdress this subject like a year after the first store is established in town? Just,
a
put
good
that in
idea.
the record that we're going to come back and take a look at it once we have seen
Seems
what
wise.
the impact is and hopefully the state rules have been established.
Absolutely.
Good idea.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Just one quick question. So we, the city, like this, the state has said, here's where population, you will allow this many. If it's 1 over the 12,000, whatever, then you get 2. What if nobody wants to open a store here?
Then we don't,
Then we don't have a store here.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah, we don't have to.
right,
If nobody wants to.
right.
It's a business like.
Other than the city one
We
apparently, but
just
other
have-
than that,
We just have to follow the state's laws
Right.
of making sure that we can enable it.
right. Can't
You
restrict.
have to allow
can't
it.
veto Yep.
Good question, though. Yeah.
And we have so few sites. That one on Century and South, man, that's gonna happen.
Yeah, that one, right. It's
I
sitting
mean,
there
if they
waiting.
clean up the building,
so the-
I'm okay with it.
The only problem with some locations, it's gonna take a large investment to get
Yeah.
a site
Yes,
up
that
to
is gonna
code
take
and
a
speed and,
Right.
because
There's a lot of
these,
empty spots.
And there's a lot of regulation
There
goes
is.
into running a facility like that,
There-
especially if you're producing.
there's.
huge.
It's tightly controlled, you
Yeah.
have to have a pretty airtight security plan.
Yeah.
Okay.
Business plan, I mean, you're not gonna just have some guy come in and be like, hey, I wanna start selling weed here. Nah,
Yeah.
it's gonna be a pretty
Not
tightly
Not gonna be
controlled.
the tot boss bus and then the weed bus.
Yeah,
You gotta have a brick and mortar building.
No, but I can tell you, when I cross that border into Michigan and I see those locations, and you look at who is behind the store on each of those locations, let me tell you, there is a lot of dollars invested in those.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And let me tell you, you could look at the people and you might think otherwise, until you look at the investment behind it, there's a lot of money
Oh,
behind it.
yeah.
There is.
Yeah.
So respectfully, I mean, that's one thing I will say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They get serious about it.
It's big money.
It
is-
There's a lot of
it's
money.
Money to be
Big
made.
money.
They,
Yeah.
yes,
It's
they
gonna
do.
generate a lot of money.
Yeah.
It really is. Yep.
Well,
Okay.
it's tax revenue.
With that, we don't have any commission business items beyond that. So are there reports? Let's start down on your end.
Nope. None for me.
Mr. Murick,
Nothing for me.
Mr. Wise,
I do not.
no reports.
I got
Mr.
nothing.
You okay?
Sorry.
That's good. That's
Sorry.
good. Just
I
keep
got
going.
nothing.
Nothing? Golly, I should have something then.
Happy holidays.
I do have a question.
Happy holidays, I guess, yeah.
Did the city, or is the city doing a letter to Metro Transit about the changes on the routes?
We were literally just talking about that today here. So
Okay.
it's in process, yes.
Thank you.
Process.
I just,
Good.
and I figured the more the more vocal that they have, the less likely something like that's going to affect us negatively.
Yeah. Well, the only thing I will say is I will encourage people to continue to be customers of the businesses in town because my wife and I have tried really hard to do that and go into the places that are just opening up. There's the new Asian market that just opened.
Oh, yes.
I haven't been in there yet, but it's, I mean, that's something I really would encourage and try and get people to get out there if there's any, and I think we went to the one, I can't remember the name of it, the one that used to be a pharmacy with the little awning next to Shangri-La.
Oh, the bakery.
What's it called?
Can't
think of the name. Yeah, yeah. it's
My
the
wife
new-
was single-handedly trying to keep them.
There's a new bakery, and there's a couple of little, but there's the African market that's over there.
Okay.
That's the one I was trying to think of. But, I mean, just, there's all kinds of opportunity.
Yeah.
These little ones, and let's encourage them. That's-
Have they been featured in the city newsletter, or are we able to do that?
I think they were when they opened up. I'm pretty sure. I can check on that, but I'm sorry.
He's talking about baked goods.
A bacon donut.
It's
Yeah.
bacon donuts.
I
They're real
actually-
good.
I actually asked them about if they were gonna start making bread. Bread is a
what I
whole nother
want.
animal.
Oh, yeah.
Sure is.
If they started making good bread,
Yeah.
boy, they'd have my
We
business.
got a little coffee shop now.
Yeah.
finally,
Yeah.
by the
Been
candy
there.
shop, but,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, there's things that's happening.
Yeah, the coffee and candy. Yeah. In that same building.
Fan of wheat, but if we put it right by the candy shop.
Yeah, there you go.
Right? Wheat,
Yeah.
bakery.
Okay,
We
with
just
that,
said that we weren't gonna allow that.
One-stop shop.
with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion.
Motion to adjourn from Commissioner Rothi. Is
I'll
there a
second.
Second from Commissioner Muick. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Adjourned at 7:18 PM.
That wasn't too bad.